Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine.
Lots to get to this week. Major movement at the national level. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik out of consideration to be the United States ambassador to the UN.
President Donald Trump explaining the withdrawal coming down to politics outside of New York. In a post on Truth Social, Donald Trump said, "It is essential we maintain every Republican seat in Congress. We must be unified to accomplish our mission." And Elise Stefanik has been a vital part of our efforts from the beginning. I have asked Elise as one of my biggest allies to remain in Congress.
Now, right now, Republicans hold a slim margin in the House of Representatives, 218 seats to the Democrats' 213. So they can really not afford to lose many seats if they want to keep that majority and push through the president's agenda in Congress. Currently, there are 4 vacancies, 3 special elections already planned on the books, with 2 of them happening on Tuesday. One of those in the Florida 6, razor tight right now. Republicans fear they might lose that seat. If Stefanik was confirmed to the UN, her seat would then be up for grabs. Despite being a solid red district, at least for her, anything can happen in the jump ball nature of a special election, and the president not willing to take that chance. In Albany, a recently created commission is charged now with restoring the public's trust in government.
State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government was created 3 years ago, and we had the chance to sit down with the executive director and hear how things have developed.
Sanford Berland. Mr. Berland, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, John. Great pleasure to be here.
Lots to talk about. I want to talk about the recent court decision. I know it was a close decision, 4-3, and it dealt with some of your powers. Talk about that a little bit and how it went in your favor, correct?
It did go in our favor. We're very pleased with the outcome in the court. It validated the structure of our commission with respect to the execution of enforcement actions. We can now move forward aggressively with those. We had been laboring under an unfortunate series of contrary rulings from the lower courts that had been something of an impediment to our moving forward. We've continued investigations. Now we're ready to move forward. It really is a vindication, not only of the structure, but of the arrangement that the legislature and the governor jointly made to have an agency with some modicum of independence capable of overseeing ethics for both the legislature and the executive branch of state government. So we're very pleased with it, and it's given us the ability to move forward.
Now, for those
aggressively in pursuing our agendas.
For those who they've never heard of this commission or this case that you just recently won, talk a little bit about who was winning those lower court cases and what was the issue? Was this all about the governor and novels and books, or was it about something else?
It really went to the arrangement that the governor and the legislature had made to give this agency, as I said, some independence. Our agency has a broad mandate. In addition to providing ethics training to the entire executive branch workforce of over 330,000 individuals, we also oversee lobbying activity at both the state and the local level in New York. And this case involved the execution of our enforcement powers. The former governor argued that because Governor Hochul does not have a majority of the appointments to our commission, which consists of 11 commissioners, 6 of whom were appointed by the legislative leadership, 3 by the governor, 1 each by the controller and the attorney general, that allocation of appointments and the way appointments are vetted by an independent panel made up of the law deans of the accredited law schools in the state of New York, that violated constitutional principles of separation of powers. For our part, we argue that that's not how separation of powers works in New York. It's a much more flexible doctrine, and it acknowledges that there's a balance between checks and balances on the one hand and separation of powers on the other. And the Court of Appeals agreed with our position, and more importantly, with the arrangement that the legislature and the executive, the governor, came to in forming our agency.
So what does this free you up to do now, this ruling in your favor? Are you looking back at that book deal, or is this going to be looking forward to other lobbying issues you might be investigating, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm out at liberty because of the statute, which imposes confidentiality on us when we're conducting an investigation or conducting an enforcement proceeding. but it doesn't remove a roadblock in taking matters to hearing and pursuing them to conclusion. And if the individuals, the respondents, are found to have violated the ethics laws at the end of that process, then the findings are made public. At this point, we can't talk about them. But the significant part is that the roadblock presented by the litigation has been removed by the Court of Appeals, and we're free to move ahead in all of our matters.
I'm no expert in this area, but I know with Jay Cope, the previous commission, it seemed like the criticism was a lot of politics was getting involved in that, and that it disbanded. Now we have this new commission. Where is it possible to keep the politics out of it and truly be independent, or is there a lot of pressure you're feeling, not just from lawsuits, but from lawmakers? They created you, but sometimes I feel like they don't want you to be free to do what you have to do.
The key to this agency, and I think it actually was very well thought out, both by the legislature and by the governor, and validated by the courts, is that the commission is free from political influence. The commissioners are appointed by the political bodies, but they're vetted by, before the appointments can become finalized, they're vetted first by this independent body of law deans. And after that, they can only be removed by the commission itself. Each commissioner serves a 4-year term. They can serve a second 4-year term, but that's the limit on it. And again, they're not answerable directly to any particular branch of political branch of the government once that takes place. There are lots of, as we demonstrated to the Court of Appeals, there are lots of ways in which government can influence the agency if it feels it's not performing its obligations. So it's not as if it's without any control, but political influence to the maximum extent is removed. And I think the agency does, in fact, operate quite free of that kind of influence.
We only got a minute left, so I'll have to be brief with this question, but I want to give you a chance to talk about it. You recently made a budget request. I think it was like an extra $800,000 or something. Talk about why that number, what you need that money for from the lawmakers.
Yeah, we need that money to complete our staffing plan. Our staffing plan was approved previously by the legislature. We want to get it up to a level of just under 70 individuals across the agency. That means in the lobbying regulatory part of our agency, and investigations and enforcement, in our training division. We have lots and lots of work to do. So we need that money to bring in about another 10 to 12 individuals within the agency, particularly in the enforcement and investigation part of the agency. And we need to expand our infrastructure. And there's some technological innovations that cost money that we want to implement. So we're asking for roughly $844,000 over our prior budget. And we remain guardedly optimistic that our appropriation will meet our request.
Seems
we're
like
not there yet. We're waiting to see how the budget plays out.
Seems like a drop in the bucket compared to what the overall budget is. All right, Sam, at least that's my perspective, but I'm not the one writing the check. Sir, Sanford Berland, Commission on Ethics and Lobbying, thanks for coming out today. We do appreciate it.
Same, John. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Very much appreciated. Be well.
Well, thank you. The countdown is on now for New York State's budget. When we come back, we'll hear from a New York lawmaker on what goes into the last-minute budget negotiations. Also, if you got a comment or story idea, you got to tell us about it. Email us at news@news10.com, or you can reach out on X. We are at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. New York's budget deadline is nearing.
Budget negotiations continuing this week. Lawmakers working to agree on a unified budget ahead of this week's deadline.
Now, the governor's proposed $252 billion plan in her executive budget. The Senate and the Assembly, their one-house budgets increased spending to about $255 billion.
In addition to negotiating over spending, several policy measures are included in the state budgets. The governor looking to address cell phone use in schools by proposing a bell-to-bell ban. She also included discovery reform and changes to mental health laws.
The Republican minority in the legislature has largely decried both budgets as just too expensive. The Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins called the Senate's one-house budget basically describing it as a fiscal battle plan against predicted federal cuts.
We are making good progress. As I always say, we're rowing in the same direction, which tends to make the negotiations easier. However, the process is tedious because what we see on the horizon coming from our Republican colleagues in Washington, it really is difficult and it's deeply disturbing.
The governor, however, saying she's working to get negotiations done to get the budget out on time.
I'm not aiming for a late budget. We always strive for on-time budget. I've been trying to drive the conversations countless hours over the last week, the weekend, today, tonight. So we are in, overdrive in terms of trying to push this forward.
Joining us now to give additional insight on the state budget negotiation process is Assemblyman John McDonald. He's a Democrat representing the 108th District. Thank you so much for joining us. Always good to have you on.
Pleasure to be here, Jamie.
So let's talk about the state budget. It's due on April 1st, but what's it like for lawmakers during this process? What's a day in the life of a lawmaker?
It's not just today, it's really the last 60, 85 days. Once the budget's been released, it's just a constant outreach from advocacy groups, from constituents, and depends on when the ideas are starting to get traction. Recently, as you know, the governor proposed some guidelines on masks in public, and the masks are being met with some interesting responses. There are people that are concerned that it might infringe on people's religious beliefs, their health beliefs, their freedom of speech and expression. So if you're asking me what has been like the last couple days, it's been a lot about making sure that we uphold our commitment to try to do a 7.8% increase for wages for those individuals working with our most vulnerable populations. And there's been a lot of concerns about funding for education, but also a lot of concerns about what this mask guidelines would look like. They actually call it a mask ban, but that's not really what we're talking about. But that being said, a lot of different issues. And we have a lot of visitors at the Capitol on a regular basis. Today it's kind of quiet, the members are gone, but for the most part, a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, a lot of visitors.
And a lot of conferences, I'm sure.
A lot of conferences, of which the Speaker, at least I can speak for the Assembly, does a good job of updating us on where we are at and where we are not at. And that's been, yesterday we kind of had a little, it was basically, you guys, you can go back to your districts because there's not much to update you on. The big holdups in the budget, which people want to know, obviously involuntary commitment is an issue. Discovery is the big issue. And, we've been discussing internally every night. We've been working every night in conference, outside of the public view, to talk about, what's the governor intending to do? How do we respond to it? What does it really look like? But where we're kind of held up right now is we need to see actual written language. Each member wants to be able to say, I like this, I don't like this, here's what I want to change. And Speaker's been good about not making any commitments until he's got a majority of the conference on board.
And I know he likes to say that he doesn't like policy in the state budget.
It's true. I mean, the reality is, there's a lot of wants and needs in the budget, and we're trying to deliver, particularly in these uncertain times, a fiscally responsible budget. The policy items is what really draws the process out. So whether it's the mask guidelines, involuntary commitment, discovery, the bell-to-bell, or what we're going to do with cell phones in schools, those are the four large sticking points that need to be resolved. Now, the truth of the matter is, we're not going to be in session on Monday because there's an observance of Eid. We'll be back on Tuesday. Something could break over the weekend where we walk in Tuesday morning, we're going to vote to extend the budget another week or so, whatever the governor decides, because we want to make sure the public employees continue to get paid. But they may come to some language that we can at least share with the conference, and who knows, it could move along very quickly. It's funny the Speaker says this, and I don't think he says this glibly, but the policy items is what protracts it for weeks at a time. The finances, we have a good idea where it's going to end up. It could probably be all agreed to in about 6 hours' time. So once the policy items are addressed, everything else falls into place.
And I know you mentioned the bell-to-bell cell phone ban.
Yeah.
Where does your conference stand on that?
I think a majority of the members are saying, we want to have consistency for every student, every classroom, throughout in every district throughout the state of New York. Some districts, and I meet with all my school districts. I have 12 school districts I meet with, and I'm like, I don't know if you school board members and superintendents really want to have that responsibility of exactly what it is. So we're trying to give them a little bit of latitude, particularly in implementation. We want to make sure there's proper funding to support this. But I think we're going to try to have as universally acceptable a consistent policy throughout the state of New York. And I think that's fair. We don't want the teachers to become the cell phone police. We want the teachers to teach. We want the kids to learn.
And this is a big budget. $252 billion is what the governor proposed. Out of everything in the state budget that she's proposed, what are some of your favorite items?
That's an interesting dynamic. Obviously, being a Capital Region resident, the $400 million, of which $150 million is for the State Museum, $200 million is obviously for the City of Albany. I think that's an important aspect. The governor is showing a commitment to her second home. And as I've always said, as much as I don't represent the capital city any longer, the capital city has to be strong. If that's strong, the capital region, Albany County particularly, but the others will be strong. So I'm happy about that. I think we're being responsible with education funding, which is important in many aspects. So those are kind of some of the highlights that come out of the budget. There's always a lot to like in the budget. There's environmental concerns. One representing Troy, we have $100 million. I'm hoping we can carry across the goal line for lead service line replacement, which is a big issue in many communities, but particularly in the city of Troy, and been working very close with the community to try to bring that across the goal line.
And my final question for you is, if you had to guess, when do you think the state budget will be finalized?
When the last gavel comes down. I'm hopeful. I'm always an optimistic guy because it's never fun being negative, right?
Right.
I'm hopeful that maybe by the end of next weekend, we can shut it down. It depends on once again, the language on the policy. I'd like to think worst case scenario, end of the weekend after, so right before the Easter recess. But I'm also the first one to tell you, I will go to Saratoga Racetrack to watch the horses, but not to bet on them.
All right, we'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much for your insight. We always appreciate it.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you. The crowded race for New York City mayor seeing one candidate pull ahead in popularity. When we return, take a look at the latest polling and what this could mean for the race. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Welcome back. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo still holding on to a lead in the New York City mayoral race. The crowded field of candidates continuing to jockey for position.
A new poll from Pix 11 showing where the other candidates stand. Pix 11's Grace Gomez breaks down the latest numbers.
An exclusive poll conducted by Pix 11 in partnership with Emerson College and The Hill shows former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who entered the race in early March, is the first choice for 38% of voters. In second place is New York State Assembly member Zohran Mamdani, who is polling at 10%, followed by current Mayor Eric Adams, who is now in third at 8%.
We've seen undecided numbers come down over the past month, and a lot of those folks are making up their minds in favor of Cuomo.
New York State Senator Jessica Ramos and New York City Controller Brad Lander both sit at 6%, while former City Controller Scott Stringer comes in at 5%. Notably, 17% of voters remain undecided. The new poll also reveals some significant shifts since February. Mamdani surged by 9 points and Cuomo gained 5, while Mayor Adams dropped by 2 points. According to Emerson polling, there's a certain age group supporting Mamdani.
We see the growth there is mostly due to younger voters. However, they're certainly not a monolith here. And when I say younger voters, I mean voters under the age of 40.
As for top issues voters say they care about the most, crime leads the way with 33%, followed by housing at 23%. As for congestion pricing, voters are split down the middle whether it should continue or not.
White voters are actually the most supportive of congestion pricing.
And on the city's sanctuary status, 46% of voters are in favor of preserving the laws. 34% support repealing the status.
That was Grace Gomez reporting. Stick around, back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Finally, in Empire State Weekly, let's bring it back to the budget. That state budget due on April 1st. In the last couple of years, lawmakers have had to take special measures to keep the government running while the budget deliberations continued.
We'll be sure to keep an eye on all things at the state capitol and bring you the latest analysis when we learn more about it.
For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you here next week when we might have a state budget.
Don't you forget, you can watch this show, Empire State Weekly, all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of the show on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.